Marcus Williams had always believed that everything happens for a reason. At 34, he was a successful software engineer living alone in his suburban Chicago home, working remotely and enjoying the quiet life he'd built for himself. But on that rainy Thursday evening in October, fate was about to deal him a hand he never saw coming. He was driving home from the grocery store when he spotted something moving in the shadows beside the highway. Through the rain-streaked windshield, he could make out a dog, a beautiful German Shepherd mix, limping along the shoulder, soaked to the bone. Without hesitation, Marcus pulled over. "Hey there, boy," he called softly, stepping out into the downpour. The dog looked up with the most soulful brown eyes Marcus had ever seen. There was something almost human about that gaze, intelligent but also desperate. "You look like you could use some help." The dog didn't run. Instead, it limped toward Marcus as if it had been waiting for him. No collar, no tags, ribs showing through matted fur. This was clearly a stray who'd been on his own for a while. "Come on, let's get you somewhere warm," Marcus said, opening his car door. The dog climbed in without hesitation, settling into the passenger seat like he belonged there. Marcus decided to call him Scout. The dog had that alert, watchful quality that reminded him of an old Western movie. That first night, after a warm bath and a hearty meal, Scout curled up on a blanket by the fireplace, and Marcus felt something he hadn't experienced in years: the warm satisfaction of doing something genuinely good. What Marcus didn't know was that Scout's real name was Ranger, and he had been meticulously trained for a very specific purpose by his actual owner, Alex Chen, a man who made his living in ways that would shock most people. Over the next few weeks, Marcus couldn't believe his luck. Scout was the perfect dog, house-trained, obedient, and incredibly smart. He seemed to understand Marcus's routines almost immediately. When Marcus worked late, Scout would quietly lie by his desk. When it was time for bed, Scout would head upstairs first, as if leading the way. "You're like a furry roommate who actually pays attention," Marcus laughed one evening, scratching Scout's ears as they watched TV together. But Scout was paying attention to much more than Marcus realized. Every night, the dog would wait patiently for Marcus to fall into deep sleep. Then, moving with the silence of a shadow, Scout would begin his real work. The dog had been trained to identify valuable items, electronics, jewelry, cash, and more importantly, to remember exactly where Marcus kept everything. Scout noted the spare key location, the safe behind the painting in the study, even the way Marcus input his phone's passcode with his thumb while half asleep in the mornings. 3 blocks away, Alex Chen waited in his van every night, watching for Scout's signal, a specific pattern of barks that meant all clear. Alex had spent 2 years training Ranger for operations like this. The dog was his perfect partner, innocent-looking, naturally trusted by humans, and capable of gathering intelligence no human burglar ever could. It started small. Marcus would misplace his wallet and find it in slightly different locations. His loose change seemed to disappear from the kitchen counter. He'd set down his work laptop in one room and swear he found it somewhere else the next morning. "I'm working too hard," he told his sister Sarah during their weekly phone call. "I'm starting to lose track of everything." "Maybe you should get more sleep," Sarah suggested. "Or maybe Scout's moving things around. Dogs can be weird about moving stuff," Marcus laughed. "Scout's been perfect. Honestly, I don't know what I did before I found him." What Marcus couldn't see was the nightly routine happening right under his nose. Every night at exactly 2:47 a.m., a time Alex had determined was Marcus's deepest sleep phase, Scout would quietly pad downstairs. Using his teeth, he'd carefully manipulate door handles and drawers that had been left slightly ajar. He'd retrieve small bills from Marcus's wallet, pocket change from various locations, even expensive pens and small electronics. Scout had a remarkable ability to choose items that wouldn't be immediately missed. Never the entire wallet, just a few bills. Never the expensive watch, just the cheaper backup one. Never the main laptop, just accessories and dongles that might be forgotten about for weeks. Each item was carefully carried to the back door, where Scout had learned to use his weight to push against the door handle Marcus had recently replaced. A lever-style handle that was easier to manipulate than traditional knobs. Scout would take the items to a specific spot by the old oak tree in the backyard, where Alex would collect them during his 3 a.m. pickup runs. By dawn, Scout would be back in his bed by the fireplace, looking like the picture of innocence when Marcus came downstairs for coffee. After 3 weeks, Marcus started noticing a pattern. His credit card bills were arriving with charges he didn't remember making. Small amounts, $20 here, $50 there, but they were adding up. His spare cash seemed to evaporate faster than usual. The expensive noise-cancelling headphones he'd bought for work had vanished entirely. "I'm either losing my mind or someone's been in my house," Marcus confided to his neighbor, Mrs. Patterson, while walking Scout one afternoon. "Honey, you need to get a security system," she said, eyeing Scout admiringly. "Though with this beautiful boy around, I can't imagine anyone would dare break in." That evening, Marcus decided to set up a basic security camera in his living room, just a small one he could monitor from his phone. Scout watched with interest as Marcus positioned it on the bookshelf, carefully noting its angle and range. That night, Scout performed his most daring operation yet. While Marcus slept, the dog managed to jump onto a chair and nudge the camera with his nose, adjusting its angle just enough to miss the pathway to the back door. It was a move Alex had trained him for months to perfect. The art of neutralizing basic surveillance. When Marcus checked the footage the next morning, all he saw were hours of an empty room with Scout sleeping peacefully on his blanket. Everything changed on a cold November morning when Marcus woke up to find his laptop bag open and his spare charger missing. This time, Scout had made a mistake. He'd left tiny muddy paw prints leading from the living room to the back door. Marcus's heart started racing. Could it be possible? He knelt down and examined the prints more carefully. They were definitely Scout's size and shape, and they were fresh, from sometime during the night when the sprinklers had made the backyard muddy. "Scout," Marcus called softly. The dog trotted over, tail wagging, looking as innocent as always. But now Marcus noticed something he'd missed before. Scout's paws weren't quite clean, and there was a small piece of grass stuck between his toes. That evening, Marcus pretended to go to bed as usual, but instead crept to the top of the stairs and waited. At exactly 2:47 a.m., he heard the soft sound of paws on hardwood floor. Holding his breath, Marcus carefully made his way down the stairs and peered around the corner. What he saw made him question his own sanity. Scout was standing on his hind legs at the kitchen counter, using his teeth to carefully extract bills from Marcus's wallet. With surgical precision, the dog took exactly 3 $20 bills, left the rest, and then moved toward the back door. Marcus watched in stunned silence as Scout manipulated the door handle with an expertise that clearly came from extensive training. This wasn't random dog behavior. This was a planned operation. Marcus followed at a distance as Scout made his way to the old oak tree. There, the dog sat and waited, looking toward the street with obvious expectation. Marcus checked his watch. 3:15 a.m. 10 minutes later, a dark van pulled up slowly, headlights off. A man in dark clothing got out and approached the tree. Scout's tail wagged as the man collected the stolen items and gave the dog what appeared to be a treat. Marcus felt his world spinning. His beloved rescue dog, the companion he'd grown to love, was working with a professional thief. But as the initial shock wore off, it was replaced by something else: curiosity. This was the most elaborate scheme he'd ever heard of. Who was this person? And how had they trained a dog to be their accomplice? Instead of calling the police immediately, Marcus made a decision that would surprise even himself. He wanted to know the whole story. The next morning, Marcus acted completely normal around Scout, who seemed pleased with himself and extra affectionate. But Marcus was already formulating a plan. Using his skills as a software engineer, Marcus set up a more sophisticated surveillance system, one that Scout wouldn't be able to detect or disable. Hidden cameras with night vision, motion sensors, even a GPS tracker that he managed to attach to Scout's collar during their afternoon walk. Over the next week, Marcus documented everything: Scout's precise timing, his selection criteria for items to steal, the location of drops, and the regular pickup schedule. The sophistication of the operation was actually impressive from a technical standpoint. Marcus also did some detective work on the van's license plate, which he'd managed to photograph from his upstairs window. A little online research revealed it was registered to Alex Chen, age 29, with an address across town. But here's where Marcus surprised himself. Instead of feeling angry, he found himself fascinated. This Alex person had clearly invested enormous time and effort into training Scout. The dog's skills were remarkable. He was like a four-legged secret agent. Rather than go to the police, Marcus decided on a different approach. He was going to confront Alex directly, but not in the way anyone would expect. On Friday evening, Marcus left a note at the drop site under the oak tree. "Alex, we need to talk. I know about Scout's nighttime activities. Meet me tomorrow at 2 p.m. at Riverside Park East entrance. Come alone and bring Scout. I'm not calling the police yet. Marcus." Saturday afternoon came, and Marcus wasn't sure if Alex would show up. But at exactly 2 p.m., he saw the familiar van pull into the parking area. A young Asian man got out, looking nervous but determined, with Scout on a leash. Marcus approached slowly, his hands visible. "Alex." "Look, man, I can explain," Alex started. "I'm sure you can," Marcus interrupted. "But first I have to ask, how the hell did you train him to do all that?" Alex looked confused by Marcus's tone. He'd been prepared for anger, threats, maybe even violence. He wasn't prepared for what sounded like professional curiosity. "You're not going to call the cops?" Alex asked cautiously. "I didn't say that," Marcus replied. "But I'm more interested in understanding how this whole operation works. The precision timing, the item selection, the way he disables security cameras. This is next-level stuff." Despite himself, Alex felt a surge of pride. No one had ever appreciated the technical aspects of what he and Ranger had accomplished. "It took 2 years of training," he said. "Ranger's incredibly smart. German Shepherds are natural problem solvers, but he's exceptional even for his breed." "Scout," Marcus corrected automatically, then caught himself. "Wait, his real name is Ranger?" "Yeah. And he wasn't lost that night you found him. I'd sent him out to scope your neighborhood. Your house looked like a good target. Single guy, working from home, nice stuff, quiet street." Marcus felt a mix of betrayal and admiration. So everything was planned? The limping, the starving act. The limping was real. He'd stepped on some glass earlier that day. But yeah, the rest was performance. Ranger's trained to appear helpless when he needs to. They sat on a park bench, Scout Ranger between them, while Alex explained the full scope of the operation. He'd been running this scheme for 3 years, using Ranger to infiltrate homes across the city, never taking enough to seriously harm anyone. Always careful to avoid items with sentimental value, focused on people who could afford the losses. "It's not about getting rich," Alex explained. "It's about survival. I aged out of foster care with no family, no college fund, no connections. Traditional jobs barely pay enough to live on. This lets me make ends meet while I'm trying to get my life together." Marcus listened to the story, Alex's difficult childhood, his struggles with the system, his genuine love for Ranger, and his moral code about only targeting people who seemed well off. Then Marcus said something that would change both their lives. "What if I told you there was a better way to use Ranger's skills?" "I work in cybersecurity," Marcus explained. "Companies pay big money to have their systems tested by professionals who try to break in and steal data. It's called penetration testing, and it's completely legal." Alex looked skeptical. "What does that have to do with Ranger? Physical security is just as important as digital security. Companies spend millions on fancy locks and cameras, but they rarely test whether their systems can be defeated by unconventional methods." Marcus pulled out his phone and showed Alex some job postings. Security consulting firms charge $200,500 per hour for physical penetration testing. Imagine if we could offer something no one else can. A dog trained to test their defenses. You want to turn Ranger into a corporate spy dog? Exactly. We could specialize in testing security systems designed to keep out human intruders. Ranger could identify vulnerabilities that human testers might miss. Motion sensors calibrated for human height. Door locks that can be manipulated by paws. Security cameras with blind spots a dog could exploit. Alex was quiet for a long moment. "And you'd want to partner with me? After I stole from you for weeks? You stole maybe $800 worth of stuff over a month. I spend more than that on coffee. But the skills you've taught Ranger, that's worth way more than money. That's intellectual property." Marcus convinced Alex to give it a try. He arranged for them to test the security at his own office building, with permission from his manager, who was intrigued by the concept. The test was remarkable. Ranger identified weaknesses in their system that no human tester had ever found. A ventilation grate at dog height that could be opened, a motion sensor that didn't detect movement below 3 feet, a door lock that could be manipulated by pushing on the bottom of the door. Within 2 hours, Ranger had stolen a laptop from a locked office and retrieved documents from a supposedly secure filing cabinet. Marcus's manager was so impressed that he immediately wanted to hire them for a full security audit. 6 months later, Marcus and Alex had formed Canine Security Solutions, the first dog-assisted physical security testing company in the country. Ranger had become something of a celebrity in cybersecurity circles, featured in trade magazines and speaking at conferences where he would demonstrate his skills while Alex explained the training methodology. They'd developed a whole program around Ranger's unique abilities. He could test everything from residential security systems to corporate facilities to government buildings. The business was booming, with clients booking months in advance. Alex had moved into a legitimate apartment, enrolled in community college courses in business and computer science, and was making more money than he'd ever imagined possible, all legally. Marcus had gained not just a business partner, but a genuine friend and the most interesting work challenge of his career. He'd also kept Ranger, who now lived primarily with Marcus, but spent workdays with Alex. "You know," Marcus said one evening as they wrapped up a security assessment at a major bank, "I think this is the first time in my life that getting robbed worked out in my favor." Alex laughed. "I was thinking the same thing. Ranger, you were a much better criminal than we realized. You stole our old lives and gave us better ones." As word spread about their unique services, Marcus and Alex began to see opportunities everywhere. Insurance companies wanted them to test home security systems. Retail chains needed to understand how their loss prevention measures might be defeated. Even the FBI expressed interest in understanding how trained animals might be used in criminal operations. They developed a training program for other dogs, creating the first curriculum for ethical hacking hounds. They wrote a book about animal-assisted security testing. Alex became a sought-after speaker about rehabilitation and second chances, while Marcus pioneered new methodologies in physical penetration testing. The company that started with a chance encounter on a rainy highway had grown into a multi-million-dollar consulting firm with offices in 3 cities. 2 years after their first meeting in the park, Marcus and Alex were invited to speak at the International Conference on Security and Technology. Their presentation, from burglar dog to security consultant, innovative approaches to physical penetration testing, received a standing ovation. During the Q&A, someone asked Alex about his earlier life of crime. "I'm not proud of what I did before," Alex said honestly, "but I learned something important. Skills themselves aren't good or evil. It's how you choose to use them that matters." Ranger's abilities didn't change when we went legitimate. What changed was our purpose. Marcus added, "Sometimes the best solutions come from understanding the problem from the inside." Alex and Ranger knew more about defeating security systems than most security professionals because they'd actually had to do it. That experience, redirected toward helping instead of harming, became invaluable. On a quiet evening 3 years after their first meeting, Marcus and Alex sat in Marcus's backyard, the same backyard where Ranger had once made nightly drops of stolen goods. Now Ranger was demonstrating a new skill set for a documentary crew filming a segment about innovative businesses. "Do you ever miss it?" Marcus asked Alex. "The adrenaline of the illegal stuff." Alex thought for a moment. "Sometimes, but then I remember what it felt like to always be looking over my shoulder, never knowing if today was the day I'd get caught. This is better. We get all the intellectual challenge and problem solving, plus the satisfaction of knowing we're actually helping people. Plus, Ranger gets treats either way," Marcus pointed out. They watched as Ranger flawlessly executed a demonstration for the camera crew, bypassing 3 different security measures to retrieve a marked object from a mock-secured room. "You know what's crazy?" Alex said. "That night when you found Ranger on the highway, I was actually having second thoughts about the whole operation. I was starting to realize that it was a dead-end path. Part of me hoped someone would figure it out and force me to find a different way. Right. Though I have to admit, this wasn't exactly what I had in mind when I wished for a different life." As the sun set over their extraordinary partnership, both men reflected on how a chance encounter, a stolen laptop charger, and one very intelligent dog had transformed 2 lives in ways neither could have predicted. The dog that Marcus had rescued had indeed been robbing him every night, but in the end, that robbery had led to the greatest opportunity either of them had ever received. proof that sometimes the most unexpected problems can become the most valuable solutions.